"Hello, good morrow," said the stranger in a faultless but peculiar English. "You're civilized, aren't you? You come from the other place, outside the reservation?" "Who on earth?" Bernard began in astonishment. The young man sighed and shook his head. "A most unhappy gentleman," and pointing to the bloodstains in the center of the square. "Do you see that damned spot?" he asked in a voice that trembled with emotion. "A gram is better than a dam," said Lenina mechanically from behind her hands. "I wish I had my soma. I ought to have been there," the young man went on. "Why wouldn't they let me be the sacrifice? I'd have gone round 10 times, 12, 15. Palawitwa only got as far as 7. They could have had twice as much blood from me. The multitudinous seas incarnadine." He flung out his arms in a lavish gesture, then, despairingly, let them fall again. "But they wouldn't let me. They dislike me for my complexion. It's always been like that. Always." Tears stood in the young man's eyes. He was ashamed and turned away. Astonishment made Lenina forget the deprivation of Soma. She uncovered her face and for the first time looked at the stranger. "Do you mean to say that you wanted to be hit with that whip?" Still averted from her, the young man made a sign of affirmation. "For the sake of the pueblo, to make the rain come and corn grow, and to please Pukong and Jesus, and then to show that I can bear pain without crying out. Yes." And his voice suddenly took on a new resonance. He turned with a proud squaring of the shoulders, proud, defiant, lifting of the chin, "to show that I'm a man. Oh!" He gave a gasp and was silent, gaping. He had seen for the first time in his life the face of a girl whose cheeks were not the color of chocolate or dogskin, whose hair was auburn and permanently waved, and whose expression, amazing novelty, was one of benevolent interest. Lenina was smiling at him. Such a nice looking boy, she was thinking, and a really beautiful body. The blood rushed up into the young man's face. He dropped his eyes, raised them again for a moment, only to find her still smiling at him, and was so much overcome that he had to turn away and pretend to be looking very hard at something on the other side of the square. Bernard's questions made it a diversion. Who? How? When? From where? Keeping his eyes fixed on Bernard's face, for so passionately did he long to see Lenina smiling that he simply dared not look at her. The young man tried to explain himself. Linda and he. Linda was his mother. The word made Lenina look uncomfortable. Were strangers in the reservation. Linda had come from the other place long ago, before he was born, with a man who was his father. Bernard pricked up his ears. She had gone walking alone in those mountains over there to the north, had fallen down a steep place and hurt her head. Go on, said Bernard excitedly. Some hunters from Malpai had found her and brought her to the pueblo. As for the man who was his father, Linda had never seen him again. His name was Tomakin. Yes, Thomas was the DHC's first name. He must have flown away, back to the other place, away without her. A bad, unkind, unnatural man. And so I was born in Malpai, he concluded. In Malpai, and he shook his head. The squalor of that little house on the outskirts of the pueblo. A space of dust and rubbish separated it from the village. Two famine-stricken dogs were nosing obscenely in the garbage at its door. Inside, when they entered, the twilight stank and was loud with flies. Linda, the young man called. From the inner room, a rather hoarse female voice said, Coming. They waited. In bowls of the floor were the remains of a meal, perhaps of several meals. The door opened. A very stout blonde squaw stepped across the threshold and stood looking at the strangers, staring incredulously, her mouth open. Lenina noticed with disgust that two of the front teeth were missing, and the color of the ones that remained. She shuddered. It was worse than the old man. So fat. And all the lines in her face, the flabbiness, the wrinkles, and the sagging cheeks with those purplish blotches, and the red veins on her nose, the bloodshot eyes, and that neck, and the blanket she wore over her head, ragged and filthy. And under the brown sack shaped tunic, those enormous breasts, the bulge of the stomach, the hips. Oh, much worse than the old man, much worse. And suddenly the creature burst out in a torrent of speech, rushed at her with outstretched arms, and Ford, Ford! It was too revolting. In another moment she'd be sick, pressed her against the bulge, the bosom, and began to kiss her. Ford to kiss, slobberingly, and smelt too horrible. Obviously, never had a bath, and simply reeked of that beastly stuff that was put into Delta and Epsilon bottles. No, it wasn't true about Bernard. Positively stank of alcohol. She broke away as quickly as she could. A blubbered and distorted face confronted her. The creature was crying. Oh, my dear, the torrent of words flowed so- sobbingly. If you knew how glad, after all these years, a civilized face, yes, and civilized clothes, because I thought I should never see a piece of real acetate silk again. She fingered the sleeve of Lenina's shirt. The nails were black, in those adorable viscous velveteen shorts. And those adorable viscous velveteen shorts. Do you know, dear, I've still got my old clothes, the ones I came in, put away in a box. I'll show them to you afterwards, though, of course, the acetate has all gone into holes. With such a lovely white bandolier, though I must say your green morocco is even lovelier. Not that it did me much good, that bandolier. Her tears began to flow again. I suppose John told you what I had to suffer, and not a gram of soma to be had, only a drink of mescal every now and then, when Pope used to bring it. Pope is a boy I used to know, but it makes you feel so bad afterwards. The mescal does, and you're sick with the peyote. Besides, it always made that awful feeling of being ashamed much worse the next day. And I was so ashamed just to think of it. Me, a beta, having a baby. Put yourself in my place. The mere suggestion made Lenina shudder. Though it wasn't my fault, I swear, because I still don't know how it happened, seeing that I did all the Malthusian drill, by numbers. One, two, three, four, always. I swear it. But all the same it happened. And, of course, there wasn't anything like an abortion center here. Is it still down in Chelsea, by the way? She asked. She asked. Lenina nodded. That lovely pink glass tower. Poor Linda lifted her face and with closed eyes ecstatically contemplated the bright, remembered image. And the river at night, she whispered. Great tears oozed slowly from behind her tight shut eyelids. And flying back in the evening from Stoke Poges, and then a hot bath and vibro vacuum massage. But there, she drew a deep breath, shook her head, opened her eyes again, sniffed once or twice, then blew her nose on her fingers and wiped them on the skirt of her tunic. Oh, I'm so sorry, she said in response to Lenina's involuntary grimace of disgust. I oughtn't to have done that. I'm sorry. But what are you to do when there aren't any handkerchiefs? I remember how it used to upset me, all that dirt and nothing being aseptic. I had an awful cut on my head when they first brought me here. You can't imagine what they used to put on it. Fifth, just filth. Civilization is sterilization.